It says we're live, Sipple. There it is. On the internet. Parker. Live and in color. Yeah, long day. Long day for Nebraska.
You look haggard.
I look haggard?
A little bit. No, I'm just joking.
That's because I've been wearing a mask over the beard all day. It doesn't look good.
I had that problem. Hey, it was a long day, and you look fine. I'm just joking around.
I know. It was a long day. Nebraska lost to Minnesota 24-17. That would be Minnesota, who is playing without 33 players due to COVID-19 positives and opt-outs, without Rashad Bateman, without two starting offensive linemen from a group that was already missing two starting offensive linemen, down to two tight ends, down to 3 or 4 defensive tackles. Didn't matter. They held the ball for 35-plus minutes. They made fewer mistakes. I mean, Minnesota certainly didn't play perfectly, but they made fewer mistakes than Nebraska. And they walked out of here with a win over a Nebraska team that thought that it was in a good place going into the game. What did you – I mean, Sipple, where do you start? Like, what did you make of it?
That's where I start. I mean, it seemed like things were set up for Nebraska, Parker. That was my vibe all week. I thought things were set up for Nebraska to do what? Okay, get to 3 and 4, be in position to get to 500, get in a bowl game, and build some momentum for the program. And it just seems like it was all set up for them. I mean, because of what you said, because of Minnesota's troubles, and because Nebraska, frankly, had played pretty well for the last 2 games. In its last 2 games, it played okay. They played pretty well in losing to Iowa 26-20, and then last week, it jumped on Purdue 14-0, 17-3, 34-13. And you thought, okay, maybe they got a little something here. Adrian was starting to play pretty well. And then, then what happened was they fall behind 10-0 in the first quarter today.
Yeah.
They have a bad play coming out of the gate, a lateral that goes for 9 yards, a 9-yard loss. And they never really recovered from being down 10-0 completely. They did get one lead, and then quickly gave it up.
Yeah, when they got to 14-10, I thought, okay, well, a good opening punch sort of by Minnesota, but they were so shorthanded that I thought, well, maybe 2 long drives start to lean on them and take control of the game, but that just did not happen. We've already got a ton of comments and questions in the queue. If you got more, throw them in there. Thank you to the people that lined up on YouTube and got questions in before we even started. That's awesome. This is Husker Extra Live, presented by Tom Dinsdale Hyundai in Grand Island. We appreciate the sponsor from those guys for the whole football season. Simple, before we get going, we'll get into questions. I don't want to sound trite, but one of the things I kept thinking is, Bill Moose lamented the lack of a non-conference season, that kind of, he talked about needing to build momentum, and Scott Frost talked about what a hard start to the schedule it was with Ohio State and Wisconsin, the shortened schedule. And it's like, it doesn't matter how hard your schedule is if you don't win games like this. I mean, if you don't win games like this in the Big Ten, you're not going to win very many games, and I just, it's right. It's amazing how, 2-5 and no gimme. No matter who they play, we don't know who they're going to play yet, but no gimme next week either. Let's go to it. Kansas Husker leads us off with a couple. Many are asking, what's the problem? I think the problem is that we as Husker fans are still chasing the ghosts of the past. The past creates pressure to be what we used to be, and the will to relive the 90s is futile.
Oh, there's more problems than that. There's more pressure. That's not the only thing that's creating pressure. Of course, that's something that is an ongoing discussion. But you know what else is creating pressure is
losing.
Winning begets winning, and the great players want to go play in great programs, and it's hard to sell that right now. If you're Frost, he's got to keep selling progress. Even though it's not like there's no progress, but there's not a lot of it. And that's why that's one reason I thought this final push was going to be important for Nebraska because he's trying to sell progress in what he regards as a young program.
Yeah.
And you can't sell progress after days like this. You can't.
3-4 with 2 wins in a row and National Signing Day coming up on Wednesday and a game that maybe you feel good about coming off 2 wins next week with a chance to get to 500. You're probably going to a bowl game. I mean, that feels like progress.
Right.
That feels like progress. And that comes down to that's not a conversation that's only about this game. I mean, you could have taken care of business earlier in the season against Illinois or something like that, right?
Or I think in the program they lament losing to Northwestern and even Iowa.
Yeah. So a win in any of those. So in that situation, it's not the pressure's not all about this week. And I know that that's not what Kansas Husker was getting at, but it's just Nebraska did the same thing last year. They just left themselves no margin for error late in the season, and then they couldn't get it done down the stretch. They were feeling pressure because they didn't take care of business earlier in the fall. Ron Burgundy, hey, at least we had one of our best practice weeks. Yeah, Frost, I mean, he said, I don't even want to really bring this up, but I mean, he obviously believes it. He honestly believes it, so he said it. Joseph says, it's just so frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for Nebraska fans. I mean, they're loyal and they put a lot of emotion into it. They've invested a lot in it emotionally and not just emotionally, financially. And there's not much payoff right now. So yeah, I don't want to sound overly dramatic, but this is a loss to a team that had an awful defense, or it was the worst defense in the Big Ten by a long shot.
Yeah.
And today, they didn't look that bad to me.
Well, I know. They held Nebraska to 308 yards.
Yeah, Nebraska 4 for 13 on third down. Nebraska averages 4.8 yards per play. This is a
3.8 per pass attempt.
Oh, God, Parker. And this is a defense that gave up 49 in regulation to Michigan, 45 in overtime to Maryland. And Nebraska gets 17 and goes 4 for 13 on third down. I don't know what to say about it. Now, what Frost says, Parker, is that they're young. And they are somewhat young. I mean, you have three underclassmen starting on the offensive line and some youth at the skill positions. But they should be further along at this point in the season, 7 games in. Yeah. I don't know how you can't keep using that excuse. You can keep using it, but it's not going to fly with a lot of people.
Right. And no matter how young you are, that kind of production against that defense with where that defense has been at this year isn't going to cut it regardless. I mean, they gave up. I mean, look at Michigan. Michigan's been terrible all year, and Michigan ran 49 on them, like you said, the first week of the season. They were giving up 7.7 yards per play. I mean, just a sieve. And, a couple weeks off, you get some guys fresh. Obviously, they're out, down a lot of guys. But, of course, they had some time to work on stuff and figure out what wasn't working. But you don't just, over the course of a couple of weeks, turn a defense that's that bad into a unit that should slow you down the way that Minnesota slowed Nebraska down. Ron Burgundy, bowl chance is gone. I mean, no, honestly. Part of that's because Nebraska is going to play next week with a chance to get to 3-5. I mean, that doesn't guarantee you anything, but when you look around the league, you just wonder how many teams there are that even want to go to a bowl game. I mean, we'll see if Purdue, they didn't play this weekend. We'll see if they can play next weekend. Michigan's had problems. Wisconsin lost today to go to 2-3. So I don't know. I mean, there might just be enough teams that either don't get to 3 wins or don't want to play in a bowl game. I think we're going to see more of that. We've seen a few teams, but certainly it went from looking really good if they won today to sort of being iffy at best. We need to be done with the season completely. Yeah, Neb football 15-23. I mean, I get that. I get that sense. I understand the sentiment, but it's a team that needs to play. They just need to play as many times as they can. It's obviously
and I didn't have that sentiment about this team going into this game. That's why I'm a little confused, Parker, by it all. I mean, I guess I had sold it as, look, this team seems like it really wants to play. And then you hear like Boodle after the game, and it sounds like they still want to play.
Yeah.
But why don't they play like that more? I mean,
yeah,
that's what I don't quite understand.
Yeah, I don't know. What's everybody's thoughts on the targeting call, Ron asks?
It was targeting.
Yeah, that end zone camera made it pretty clear that there was helmet-to-helmet contact. I don't think – I mean, Sipple, we talked about this at the beginning of the year. I don't think it's a good rule the way it's enforced. I didn't think that Taylor Britt deserved to be ejected by that. But by the letter of the law, it was targeting.
Yeah, it's just by the letter of the law. No, he made a good hit. See, the thing the fundamental problem I have with targeting is, okay, when you see that play live, you're like, man, he leveled him. Nice hit. Good work. He had to make that play, and he did.
Yeah.
And then you see, there was some helmet to helmet, and you know what's coming.
Yep.
Unfortunate because Cam Taylor Britt's he's obviously has no ill intent. There's no willful intent to hurt him on that play. He's just playing football. And then he gets kicked out of the game.
Lance said, curious to know the records of other year 3 coaches around the country compared to Frost. Lance, I know one off the top of my head. Kevin Sumlin got fired tonight at Arizona. They lost 70-7 to Arizona State last night. He was 9-20. Frost currently is 11-20. Nebraska's 11-20 under Scott Frost. One note on that, Mark Sip, 20 is more losses in the first 3 seasons than any of Nebraska's 4 coaches since Osborne. Riley was 19-19. Pelini lost 12 games in the first 3 years. Callahan 15 and Solich 7. So 20 so far for Nebraska.
Conversation's different now.
It is.
Yeah, he's not getting fired.
No. Navy Thomas. Never on time and never subscribing to a local newspaper again. Sorry, we started 3 minutes after 6:30 there, fella. You don't need to come back. That's fine. Javon, what's up? How do you square what Frost says in his pressers to the product on the field? He continues to say we had a great week of practice, but the team continues to underperform.
Confusing.
Yeah, it is.
Here's the thing. He talked a lot about lack of execution, right? Well, it's his job. It's his job to get him to execute on Saturdays. It's really simple to me. It doesn't mean that much. I mean, he really has to take a look at what he's doing if they're practicing well and not playing well. That in itself is a problem. Why doesn't it translate?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They have a practice system and a program that they really believe in. I mean, it goes back to what they did at Oregon and then obviously what Scott did at UCF. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that they need to change the way they practice or anything because I don't know. We don't see any of that. So it's not really like I don't have information at hand to have a firm opinion on that. But I do wonder what they think about how it didn't transfer over. And that's not an every week conversation though. I mean, against Illinois they didn't practice well and they didn't play well. Then he's thought that they've practiced well since then and they played okay against Iowa and good enough to win against Purdue. And so, it's not like there's been dynamite practice and terrible play all year or anything like that. But it's a fair question. And it's one that I think will be part of the offseason conversation is like, how do you have the team ready to play more consistently than they are now? Good to see you too, Dean. Who do we play next from the East? Fred, good question. Don't know yet. Might find out tonight, might find out tomorrow. The best candidates, in my estimation, are Rutgers and Michigan. Maryland would be in that conversation too, but Maryland might play Michigan State in the East since Wisconsin and Minnesota seems like they're likely to play in the West. So, my best guess would be Rutgers or Michigan, but we'll find out hopefully sooner rather than later. That calls exactly why they need to evaluate the targeting rules. Yeah, Kim, I agree with you on that. What are we to make of this loss? Yeah, good question. Same book, different chapter. Jeff says Frost needs something next year, some momentum, starting to rethink Mackenzie Milton coming to Nebraska, something has to change.
I just don't know why that doesn't make much sense to me. You don't know exactly what you're going to get from Mackenzie Milton because of the nature of his leg injury. I would just say we don't need to go down the road with that conversation, because everything I've heard suggests it's not happening.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I think, most likely to stay somewhere down there in the southeast, probably. Tim says, was Betts on a milk carton today? Yeah, Tim, not much in the way of activity from Xavier Betts today. Not much anyways. Nebraska had 111 yards passing on 30 attempts or 31 attempts. It's
How many targets did he get, Parker?
Oh, that's a good question. One, maybe. Yeah, he had to fly sweep one. I think just the one, maybe two. Ooh. Frost is in over his head, plain and simple. Brian says.
What do you got to say about that, Parker?
That sounded like that one for a columnist to handle.
His record is his record. You can't argue against it. He's in a tough coaching league. The defense, I thought the defense. Now, Parker, you could take issue with this, but the defense in the third quarter got the necessary stops and gave the offense enough time to get back in it. Yeah, they didn't allow Minnesota's. They got 3 stops in the third quarter, and Nebraska's offense couldn't do anything.
Well, put it this way. So the Minnesota's 2 scoring drives in the first half were 35 and 36 yards. And then their last touchdown drive was 39 yards. And the only time they drove the field was the drive right before the half, where the drive was extended by the targeting penalty. So, they got set up. The defense gave up points on a short field after an interception, a short field after an 8-yard punt, a short field after a fumble, and a drive where a penalty turned 3 points into 7. So, and again, one long scoring drive. And then after that, 3 drives of 40 or less. They didn't play perfect. They gave up 380 yards and Minnesota ran for 4.9 a carry. And on top of that, Ibrahim could have walked that last one into the end zone and made it 31-17. So yeah, it wasn't perfect defensively, but
and they gave up the big 61-yard run right before halftime was a killer.
Yeah,
that was a killer.
JoJo Doman said after the game that he thinks that they set the front wrong on the field on that to the wrong side. Which when you got 6 seniors playing on defense, you just can't have stuff like that. But even still, they did a good enough job. They thought they got away with limiting that to 3, and then they didn't. Is this the Huskers' worst loss of the season? Larry asks. Sipple.
Well, it's either this or Illinois. It's a tough call. The fact that Minnesota was down 33 guys and had such a poorly ranked defense, you could definitely make a case that this was the worst.
Let me give you some insight into what Brian's thinking. He says, stop treating Frost like a snowflake during his post-game interviews. It's time to address the fact that he's being outcoached. What happens is we got outcoached, and the other team makes adjustments, and we keep running the same plays. So Brian thinks they're getting outcoached. Do we have any idea who will play? Oh yeah, Jeff, we went over that. Sorry guys, we get so many comments, which is fantastic, that we don't get to all of them in that timely of a manner. Will Frost make any changes with assistant coaches after the season? Larry, we'll see. There's coaching turnover on most staffs most years. I would not be surprised if there's some this year, but I guess it's hard to say. What do you think, Sipple?
Oh, if they go 2-6, or they're 2-5 right now, that would suggest some degree of change is necessary. Now, I would say this, okay? Now, keep in mind when I say this, I was wrong last year, because I said I didn't think he would make changes last year. I would say this: I can't find a guy on defense where I'd say I want to make a change.
Yeah, right. I agree.
On that defensive staff, I don't think there's a change to be made. Now, on offense, it's a little different conversation, but I don't know. I don't. It's hard to say, but I would not I feel pretty confident. I don't feel confident in saying it, but I can't find a guy on defense where you'd say, yeah, that guy needs to go. Who is it?
Yeah.
There's not, one doesn't exist on that side of the ball.
Let's see. Okay, we got a lot of comments in here, Sipple. Holy cow. I'm scrolling through trying to. Oh my goodness.
I like dead air, Parker. It's fun.
Yeah. Let's see. Sipple and Parker, will you please ask Scott why they aren't finding a way to get Luke on the field? He's one of our better athletes, quarterback, slot receiver, whatever. Yeah, Josh, he came in reserve of Martinez when Martinez had the left hand looked at and, threw a pick on one of his 2 pass attempts. I'm a little surprised they haven't gotten him a little more involved in the run game, but, I mean, if you bring him in and all you do is run, then, you're –
The other thing on that at Parker is every snap he takes in practice away from the quarterback position takes away from his development as a quarterback.
Right. Yep. Matt says you can't be a young team 3 years in a row. Well, that's true. I mean, they're young in some spots on offense, but overall, I mean, it's a veteran defense, that's for sure. It's really starting to look to me as if the Frost era hinges on whether or not Logan Smothers can sling it, Benjamin says.
I wouldn't go that far, no.
Only thing that will save my night is Sip cussing.
Oh, yeah, well, just stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Hang with us a few more minutes. Catherine says 5 years. We said 5 years. That's what Bill Moose said, too. You judge Scott Frost on 5 years, not Brian, how about you guys address the real questions and real problems in the comments? Stop sugarcoating the fact that Frost is not adjusting to his team or not adjusting his team to counteract other teams' adjustments. Well, Brian, I mean, like, they scored a touchdown in their first, like, this is what everyone said at the beginning of the year. They don't adjust at halftime. They never adjust at halftime. Well, they scored a touchdown in their first drive of the second half 3 weeks in a row, and they went 72 yards in their first drive of the second half today. And they stalled in the red zone, and they missed a 32-yard field goal from the middle of the field. So, like, I understand what you're saying, but it's not like I don't just spout off about stuff that I don't know, like, it's not, and I understand the fans are frustrated. It's totally understandable. Like, that everyone wants a reporter to go into Frost post game and just like try to own him and roast him. But like, that's not productive. And I asked on Twitter today, like during the game or right after the game, like, what is the quote unquote confrontational question that you want asked in the post game? And the stuff that people came up with, like Frost talked about literally almost all of the things that people wanted asked in his post game, but people just don't like the answers. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like what happens
in these situations is when people run out of people to blame, the media becomes the problem.
I mean, that's fine. That part of it's fine.
Yeah, I've seen it happen a million times. It's fine. I don't care.
Play calling is atrocious. Harry, there was definitely today. I mean, there were times where it just kind of was curious of like, I just was surprised they tried to throw the ball as much as they did today, especially when they weren't getting any big plays in that. This is karma for firing another winning coach, Brett says. This is what we deserve. Does Frost need to look at a scheme change due to recruiting barriers? Landon, I mean, Sipple, you've consistently said no to this. Kind of, right? Like, generally speaking, you don't think that he's going to.
Well, Parker, you have pointed out that Frost, I don't know what their run-pass ratio is this year, but last year it was 60+% run. They do run the ball.
Yeah.
They try to run it. Now, today was pass. They tried to pass a lot today. But
still, though, they ran it more than 50% today.
What was it?
It was 36 run plays, 29 passes. Now, it's probably closer to 50-50 than that because Adrian carried it 15 times, and a couple of those were probably designed passes that he scrambled on. I don't know off the top of my head how many. I'll look at that tomorrow.
As far as scheme goes, if Frost's scheme can incorporate the requisite amount of power run that that's needed for whatever situation. I think it's an easy incorporation.
Yeah.
So I know I never think about it that way. I would just wonder the one reason I don't dismiss that conversation is because I don't know that you can recruit the sort of speed and skill position talent that he was able to do at Central Florida. I mean, it's not easy to recruit receivers, wideouts to Nebraska because of the weather and because Nebraska, after all these years, still has a reputation in the minds of a lot of people as a running school.
Yeah.
So he's battling some things. He's battling some things there. I know when he went to UCF that he was very picky about where he was going to be a head coach as a young coach. And one of the reasons he chose UCF, because he told me this explicitly, this isn't any kind of speculation. He told me explicitly that UCF was a place he desired because he could literally roll out of bed and find receivers.
Yeah.
They were close. He's in Orlando, Florida. Those sort of players are all over the place down there, but they're not all over the place at Nebraska.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not. I mean, if you think about it, I haven't done any sort of like deep analysis on this, but there are not very many teams in the Midwest that effectively run spread that have been consistent winners. I mean, obviously Ohio State, but different talent base. And even like in the Big 12, I mean, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma both run wide open offenses, but that's significantly more proximate to Texas and even the South.
Oh, yeah. Better weather, too.
Yeah, but if you look at, Kansas State, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Minnesota, there aren't many in that group. I mean, none of them. Minnesota would be the closest to, trying to play like Nebraska does at this point. Maybe Missouri, but yeah. So it's an interesting conversation. They think they can do it here. A couple questions about running backs, Todd and Mr. Raj, about finding a feature running back. I mean, Mills had 9 carries today. They're young after him, but they've not gotten the production out of that position. I think that they wanted so far.
No, Mills. I don't know what to say about Mills. He's not 100%, but they don't. There's not. Listen, they have some young guys that you thought. I mean, they're scholarship guys. There's a sophomore back there that they're not getting any production out of. So I don't know. I mean, it's not. I can't just casually dismiss that kind of stuff.
I know.
They have scholarship guys. And frankly, now I'm not going to cuss, but I do frankly get tired of, they're young at running back behind Mills. You can be young and good at running back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, that doesn't have to be a big excuse at that skill position. They just didn't recruit a feature back behind Mills. Just say people just want to say what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They didn't recruit a good enough feature back behind Mills. And I don't want to hear about Sevion Morrison. He's not there. I don't know what he is, but I get a little tired of hearing about guys that are really good, but they're just not playing. It means nothing. Sorry.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put the story I wrote in the comments a couple weeks ago about how Nebraska's failed to find a featured running back over the past 3 years.
Did you? Yeah, you did. Just repost it, Parker.
No, this is my Monday story. I swear it didn't run in the paper 2 weeks ago. This game was lost because the quarterback couldn't hit wide open receivers in the offensive game plan. Defense wasn't great, but played well enough to win the game. Yeah, John, a lot of misses in this game.
I agree with that. Hey, Parker, I think the defense played well enough to win.
Yeah. So do I. They didn't play great, but I mean,
right.
Yeah. I just can't get over playing one of the worst run defenses in the country, but almost refusing to try to run the football and stop with the East-West stuff. Yeah, Leslie. I mean, I think Frost said after the game that, I mean, he mentioned it. He must think in this way. He said, sometimes we run the ball between the tackles and we crease it for 9. And then the next time we do that on first down at 2nd and 11. And I think that inconsistency, I mean, you just don't see. There were a couple times when they got a good push up front, but they're just not they're not generating push consistently in the run game at all. And when you're not generating push in the run game and you can't throw the ball down the field, that is a bad recipe offensively. That's not rocket science, so to speak. His post-game press conference was not good. Too many excuses, Todd says. Our defense wasn't good. Realistically, we gave up 31 points. They took a knee and were nice. Well, Harry, they weren't being nice. That was the best strategy to run the rest of the clock. But I understand what you're saying. Let's see. The fact that he's lost 12 games by one score shows he's getting outcoached, Fred says. Yeah, they're 4-12 in one-score games.
4-12 in one-score games, Parker?
Yep. Why no Logan Smothers? It's a free year to participate. Sipple, you raised an interesting part of this conversation with me last week, one that I hadn't really given a lot of thought to, but don't you think that the repetitions in practice must be spread out in sort of an odd way anyways, because Adrian Martinez and Luke McCaffrey are both playing? I mean, I guess my best answer to that, Fred, is that you can't realistically prepare 3 quarterbacks and get all of them reps that do the week justice in practice, right?
It's hard to. What's happening right now is Mario Verduzco is charged with getting 2 guys ready, and that is far less than ideal. Now, I don't know if they did that this week, but for a large portion of this season, his job was to get 2 guys ready to start. Not easy, hard to do. So getting 3, it's untenable.
Kent says Austin and Verduzco are both in the hot seat. Yeah, well, we'll see. How much of it is feature back for O-line? Yeah, Lloyd, sort of what we're talking about. Sure, it would be nice to have Mo Washington right now, both as a runner and a pass catcher. Yeah, Jack, but I mean, he didn't do the things he needed to do to stay in the program. So, I mean, that's the other part of this conversation.
He wasn't I only agree to a point. He was not a feature back. He tiptoed through the tulips up to the line of scrimmage. I mean, he wasn't a hard between the tackles runner. He just wasn't.
Harry Husker asked, where is Sevion Morrison? He was hurt in camp, and then just about the time he was going to sort of make a push toward, making his debut or whatever, he ended up having a health issue that held him out for, as it appears, about 21 days. So, can we get a punter? Gary, they signed a scholarship punter this offseason. Daniel Cherney suffered an injury in camp. Looks like he's going to miss the whole year because then Pristup is out this week, and Cherney was not available, wasn't even in uniform. So, yeah, they have a scholar. It's their only scholarship specialist is Daniel Cherney, but he's not been in there. 1 or 2 more, then we got Jet Sipple. Let's see. Frost said in the past that he prefers leaner offensive linemen for tempo and style of offense. Do we need to adjust? Yeah, Grant, I don't think he wants leaner. I mean, they want big guys. But they've gone to. Oh, Harry says that was sarcasm on Sevion. Okay, sorry about that. They want big guys, and they've recruited big guys, but offensive linemen take a long time to develop. Simple. It's not. You don't just recruit some talented offensive linemen and throw them in there against Big Ten teams. David Anfinson, welcome to the show, David. The Martinez regression from his freshman year is insane. Looked like a future all-conference player.
Yeah, I mean, again, he was 41 for 50 passing combined against Iowa and Purdue. I thought he was on the right track back. I don't want to get too mood swingy in these conversations, right? I mean, he had 2 pretty good games. Today, not so much. It wasn't a great passing day. I mean, the one thing I'm surprised we haven't heard, Parker's, you'll often hear from Nebraska fans is for a long time, I mean, when they were running a ground-oriented offense, it was because Osborne said it's hard to throw in Lincoln, Nebraska in November and December. Today wasn't an easy day to throw. And maybe that had something to do with it today. I don't know. I just don't think it's as simple as saying that Adrian has regressed. I think a lot has regressed, and that affects his play. A lot in the program has regressed.
Two more. One for you, one for me.
Okay, I got to be careful a little bit. When I say a lot in the program has regressed, there's just not a lot of talent around Adrian. I think we can all agree on that.
Two more. One for you, one for me. Nick says, can we hire Buffalo's coach? Well, Nebraska's not going to this offseason, but Lance Leipold might be a Big Ten coach by this time next year. By this time next month, maybe.
Yeah, Lance knows what he's doing. He does. Lance, good coach.
And John, last one. Are you concerned about losing Thomas Fidone? No. Fidone seems like he's very solidly on board, and that's a good place to end it because it's a good plug for our coverage of National Signing Day, which is Wednesday. It'll be game week and National Signing Day week, so there'll be a lot of content, as always, on huskerextra.com. Get it all there. Appreciate you guys joining us. I know it's a frustrating day, obviously, to be a Nebraska football fan, but we'll be there to cover it for you, and we appreciate you guys, coming and hanging out with us after games, before games on Thursdays, reading our stuff and all that. So appreciate you. This has been Husker Extra Live, presented by Tom Dinsdale Hyundai of Grand Island. For Sipple, I'm Parker. Thanks for watching, and try to enjoy the rest of your week.